All right, let's see. Okay, a little rusty here. It's been a little while since I set everything up, but I think everything is working properly. If something's not, let me know. I think I have all the sound settings and everything right. So, welcome on in, everybody. It's been a little while since we've been in class together. But the good news is we are moving to the second portion of the course, which I think for many of you will be a welcome change. I think it's going to be not as complicated maybe, or not as hard mathematically as what we've been doing. And then, of course, there's the fact that the stuff we'll be talking about from here on out is highly relevant to your future work, assuming you're going into some type of, if you're in this class, you're probably going into some type of healthcare related field, right? So this stuff will be highly relevant and highly important to you being good at what you do and making sure everybody's safe. So that's good. So a couple things to talk about. I know I've gotten a few questions through emails. It's kind of stuff I've referred to before, but I'm going to go into detail now so you know exactly what's going on with stuff. And then just be aware, the YouTube stream is up and running. I know some of you are in there. I will be using lots of visuals today to show you things, so not a bad idea to at least have that open, right? Remember, you kind of want to have the visuals are going to be a little better on the YouTube stream, but you can hang out in Zoom if you want. You just won't be able to see what I'm talking about necessarily, so sometimes people just at least pull up the YouTube stream and then mute it, and then they still like to hear me through Zoom, whatever you prefer, right? Whatever works for you. Thanks for everybody for throwing their name in the chat. That's going to make it a little bit easier when I take roll here in a little bit. But first, let me kind of discuss where we're going from here. So we've got our instructional calendar. So today's the 4th. So we're looking at what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 regular class meetings left, including today. And then we'll have whatever our final exam time is during this purple week here that I'm showing you on the calendar. But that's just the final that'll happen at the end. Heads up on the final. The final exam that you take in this class will only cover the material from Math for Meds, right? It won't cover the previous algebra. If you've completed that and you got a reasonable grade on it, it's behind you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, so so you don't have to worry about that. The exam that's going to take place during finals week will be strictly Math for Meds material, so strictly from the book, and really the second half of the course, little less than half, but second portion of the course that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so with that said, here's what I know I've showed you before, I've seen it a few times. Here's what the book looks like. Curran's Math for Meds, Dosages and Solutions, 11th edition. Now, there's some options here about how you, sorry, my wife's calling. I silence my phone here. There's some options here about how you want to do this. So what's going to happen is if you go to your Canvas page, right? So you go to Canvas, you're going to go into, where is it? Modules, right? So notice there's kind of two things that you want to notice now. One is right here at the beginning. So underneath the introduction module, you now have the current Math for Meds single term WebAssign. This should be showing up for you. When it's green here with this bar on it, that means I have it released to you. So you should be able to see it. So you should be able to see this. So if you go into here, now it shows a different screen for me if I go into here. So if I click this, it says, oh, do you want to load the Math for Med stuff? Yes. So obviously you're going to get a different screen. But when it shows up for me, it says, okay, here's your two classes, because I have two sections of this class. And the first one, I haven't copied these over yet, so ignore this at the bottom, but this is for your class. So you'll come in here and you can see that chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7 homework are already up here. So as soon as you get in here and get yourself set up and ready to go, you can get right into the homework. You can start it right away. So what will happen is when you come in here, it's going to ask you to set up an account. Since you're coming through Canvas, it shouldn't ask you very much. But it is going to ask you at some point to pay. So you are not required to have a physical copy of the book for this class. When you pay for this online homework, you're going to get an ebook version. So see over here on the left where it says ebook right here? That means that you will get this when you click this ebook, this is what you get, is the electronic version of the book. So you'll be able to look up anything you want in the book without having a physical copy book. So when you pay for the homework license, you'll get the electronic version of the book with it included in what you purchase. So, in the old days, you just used to purchase a book, and then for the past 15 years, it's been you also, or at least 12 years, it's been you purchase the online homework, and then, lately, most of the time, the ebook version is folded in there. So you get the ebook version for free. Now, this is a pretty important class for a lot of you. In fact, we have seen, because there's discussions going on about this class and how it's going to evolve over the coming years, there's been some discussions. And one of the pieces of information that we got as feedback from the nursing department is that this class is regularly noted as the students think, in their opinions, is the most important class they took as part of their work at Ventura College, right? That's not me saying that. That's what the nursing department shared with us about the surveys that they've given their own students in the nursing department. So pretty important, and if you think about it, getting dosages right, pretty big deal, because if you get dosages wrong, all sorts of problems can occur between the health of a patient and you getting in trouble, all sorts of things. So it's really important to get these right. So if you also want a physical copy of the book, just because you want to have it and you want to be able to, it does make flipping through the book a little bit easier. It does make it nice. 6 months from now, you kind of forgot something. You just go back and look it up. You go, oh, that's right. That's how I do that. I forgot. So what you could do is, if you really want, you could track down an 11th edition physical copy online, used or whatever. Get that for yourself if you want. Or a thing that I think would probably be okay, because I don't think that much has changed in the last few years. You could, if you find yourself Curran's Math for Meds 10th edition online, it's probably going to be significantly cheaper, but have essentially the same material in it. So, again, no one is required to have a physical copy of the book, but I know many of you have already expressed interest in wanting to do that, and this is a class where I think that's probably a good idea. Let me change this setting here so it doesn't make all that noise. Then that's up to you. You could either look up Curran's Math for Meds 11th edition or 10th edition, get yourself a used copy online or whatever, and then you have it. I would think you could get a used 10th edition extremely cheap online, and then at least you have it. So like I say, when you're studying for tests in the future, you can go, wait, it's been a year since I took that class. How do you do that thing with the dosages again? You go look it up, and you remember, or you're on a job and you know you're going to have to do something. You can look it up and make sure you're doing it well, so that you're doing it the correct way. Okay? So I don't know why my phone is blowing up all of a sudden. So it's up here, up at the top. And then remember, under homework, you also can just get the title of the book, right? If you like this here with this ISBN is going to get you the WebAssign printed access card, which you should just buy directly. So, but you have the name. The name is Curran's Math for Meds Dosages and Solutions. Okay, so but you can get that when you get the ebook version. Okay, so what you should be able to do is, here's kind of the idea. Go into your modules, click on the Math for Meds homework. When it opens up, just follow along, and it'll give you a chance to pay with your credit card. As soon as you do that, you're good to go. Okay, and you just start doing the homework, chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. And by the way, these are short chapters. Each one's about 10 pages or less in the book. So it might seem overwhelming, like 4 chapters worth of homework. It's a stretch to even call these things chapters, right? They're sort of like little mini sections. So, that's all you got to do to get started and get going. And if you really want to get yourself a copy of the book, really just once you're in here, click on ebook, and then you'll be looking at this, which tells you exactly what you need to know. Once you have the ebook, you can see exactly the name and the author and all that kind of stuff, and then you can find yourself a hard copy if you want. Okay? Let's see. There was a question about the final exam. So are we able, I think it was when I mentioned the final exam, someone asked, are we able to take it earlier than May 16th for the final exam? The school is really strict about final exams, and I have to offer I have to offer a thing that is significant in your grade at the time of the final exam. What I generally do is I'll open it up earlier, but it will be due at the time of the final exam. So you may have a little bit of time to take it earlier, but you may not. I'll have to kind of look. A lot of things are in flux right now because we've been pretty flexible with a lot of stuff for the last 2 years, but now that our classes are transitioning back to like online, then they're kind of changing the rules on us, whereas things are kind of going back to how they used to be. So, and some things are just changed and not going back. So that's one where I'll have to double check that they're still going to allow us to offer those tests starting early. I think I probably can, but I can't guarantee that you'll be able to take the test early. And then let's see, CC saying library might still have some to rent borrow. I picked one up there in case anyone needs it. Great point, CC. So our school does have a lending library program, and they might have copies left of this text that you could check out for the semester. So if you just wanted a physical copy for the rest of the semester, you could do that, and then you could just get it from the library. It doesn't cost you anything. They just verify that you're actually in the class, and then once they verify that, then you get to check out the book for this semester. If you want the book long-term, like forever to have on your bookshelf when you apply, my understanding is certain routes in nursing, you have to pass certain like state tests. I don't know. You know more about that than me, but when I was poking around for videos to put on stuff, I saw mentions of like different tests that people have to take. So anyway, so you can figure out exactly how you want to do the book situation. Yeah, so I'm seeing someone say they have an appointment that day. So it just depends. If it's a medically required appointment, then I can definitely get around the due date, and I can work with you on that. If it's something different, then it just depends on what I'm allowed to do, what the school has said. They're still giving us information about stuff, but they're oftentimes doing it last minute. So I don't want to make any promises that I'm later told we're not going to let you do that anymore. So that's all. Okay. So we got, let's see. So I talked about that. Okay. And then there was an exam. So exam just took place, right? I saw some people have already emailed me. They were not able to get the exam done. Or some people didn't like how they did. So basically, here's the situation. You get to retake the exam. This is just, this is how I do my classes anyways. I don't want to make this clear because sometimes there's confusion. The exam you take at the end of the semester, the final exam, you cannot retake that one. I am not able to allow you to retake the final because there's no time. Class is over once you take the final exam, right? But the test that you just took, if you either were not able to get a score on that because you weren't able to get to it, or you took the test and you did worse than you would have liked, then what's going to happen is later this week, I will open up another version of that exam, and you can take that instead, okay? The score that you get on the retake will replace your original score no matter what. So really, just, study for it. You don't want to retake it and then do worse. So just make sure any problems you got right, make sure you look at those. Sometimes students make that mistake of not studying the the problems they got right because they're like, well, I got them right. I don't need to look at them. And then they realize, oh, it's been like 2.5 weeks, and then they forgot how to do it. So even the problems you got correct, please make sure that you do those problems, like that you study them and go over them. And then obviously study the problems that you got wrong so that you can get those correct. The tutoring center on campus is a great place to get some help with that so that people can help you figure out the math that you need to work on so that you can hopefully do better on the retake. So I will open up that later this week. The reason I don't have an open up yet is usually when students immediately take it, like right away, they usually don't do as good. You need a few days to kind of work through and study the material. Otherwise, why would you expect to do any better if you just take it again right away and you don't study for it? So please make sure that you study for it, set yourself up for success, and then take the retake. But don't really take the retake if either way, it's up to you as a student. Just realize you might do worse, and then that becomes the new grade, right? The whole reason that I'm willing to replace the retake grade with your original is you're kind of proving to me, yeah, I know I didn't know the material as well when I took the test, but I know it better now. So then that retake score it just replaces the original score. But if you do worse, then you're kind of proving that you don't know the material very well, and that you're getting worse at it, right? So just make sure you do that. So that will show up just like the original test showed up in it's a different platform. I keep forgetting the name, but it's not my math lab. It's the Cengage product, the WebAssign. It'll be in WebAssign. It'll give you, you'll have a few days to retake it starting towards the end of this week and kind of probably till the end of the weekend. So watch for that. And then next week, you'll have it all behind you and ready to go. Okay, let's see. There's a comment here. All right, you should be able to see your score if you log into the homework again. Should show your score. Oh, sorry. That's right. We're just starting. I know why I was getting confused. We're just starting the WebAssign. The test you took was in Delta Math. That's where the retake will be, is in Delta Math. Sorry, I just said the wrong. We've got so many homework platforms. I just said the wrong one. So the homework is in Delta Math, right? So that's where the test was. That's where the retake will be. So look for that. Hold on a second. My dog is barking. I gotta go fix that. He won't be quiet. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. My son's supposed to take care of it when I'm teaching, but he wasn't taking care of it. Okay, now I can concentrate without the dog barking constantly. So, okay, right. So the retake exam, don't miss it though. It's gonna pop up either Wednesday or Thursday. You'll have probably until Sunday. Once that window closes, there's no more extra chances, right? I know some people, for various reasons, were not able to get it completed by the time it was due, yesterday, I think is what it was. Don't miss the next one because this is sort of the last chance on this test. So make sure that you plan accordingly and that you get it taken care of in that time period. Okay? So before we get into stuff, are there any more questions about setting up the new homework, the retakes, the books? Is there any kind of questions about any of that stuff? No, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, feel free to throw up more questions if they come up. Otherwise, we'll be digging into the new material, which, like I say, I think is a little bit lighter material and will be hopefully a little less stressful from here on out for people. Okay? So we're going to start with chapter 4. The first 3 chapters were like algebra review, and we just spent a lot more time on a much more intense algebra review. So you should be all good to go for the algebra from here on out, hopefully. So, like I say, if you're in the modules, you go down here, you'll see we've got the Math for Meds portion, chapters 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, and I didn't mention this. There's a discussion in our online classes. We're supposed to be giving like discussions for people to participate in. This is a graded discussion. So keep in mind, the way these online classes work is we do not meet for the same amount of time that this class is a 5-unit class. That would mean that 3 years ago, we would have been in the classroom 5 hours a week, right? You are not getting anywhere near that amount of lecture time / discussion time, all that kind of stuff, live with the teacher, right? We only meet, once a week for 90 minutes, is it? It's just it is impossible for me to cover everything that you need to know. So it's really important that, one, you read the chapters out of the book. I know this is a big request, and asking students these days to read a chapter out of the book. A lot of times you're lucky if you get 50% of the students actually reading it. I'm hoping that since this is, your future, literally, like, this is actually relevant. It's not some class that isn't part of what you're doing. And also it's, pretty, there's consequences, right? You definitely want to be doing this stuff right, that you'll read it. Most of these chapters, what they call, quote unquote chapter, we're looking at like 8 pages a piece, sometimes 10 pages a piece. So 8 to 10 pages, and that's like with examples and stuff. So it's not a ton of material. It might look like, oh, we're supposed to do 4 chapters in the next week. That sounds crazy. What is that, like 150 pages I have to read? Nah, these chapters are a lot of times like 8 to 10 pages. So there's not that much, but I'm not going to be able to cover every single detail in the 90 minutes a week that we're meeting and do examples and stuff like that. So you really want to read the chapters in order to get the information that I didn't have time to say every single detail, right? Because the truth is, even small details in this book are pretty important, because one small detail leading to a mistake can have serious consequences, right? So you really need to read. And then also, I've posted some videos in here. So these are just videos that I was able to find online. This I think probably a lot of some from the looking around I did. I think a lot of the videos I post will be from this channel. It seems to be a channel literally created for exactly what we're doing, which is helping people become nurses or nursing related fields, right? I know not everyone in this class is nurses. It's Math for Meds. I've seen there's some people are going to be paramedics and, EMTs or, whatever the different outcomes are. So that's including all of you. But this seems like some pretty helpful information here on this channel. So you can obviously explore that channel on your own if you like, but I'll be posting videos in there because she and a number of different people, I don't think she does every single video, but she does a bunch of them. But I think she might have a few where she has people help her. Anyways, it's like literally the topics we're covering in this class, right? Like this first one, we're about to talk about the metric system. She's talking about metric system conversions right here. So so you can see there's information, but the ordering should be, I talk about it in class, you read the book, and you watch the video right here. Most of these videos are not terribly long. It's like 8 minutes, a lot of them, 5 minutes, even less. So, but I think it will help kind of fill things in so that you really have a solid understanding of what's going on. So we'll talk about it in class. I guess you could do them in any order you want. If you wanted to read ahead of time and watch the videos ahead of time, that's great, because then you'll just already know what I'm talking about. But those are kind of the 3 things you should do. Come to class and participate when we're talking about it. Watch the videos. I'm not going to put up like hours worth of videos. I think the longest video I put up was like 35 minutes. And honestly, I think you could, there's like 2 videos on that one. There's an 8-minute video followed by a 35-minute video. If you really understood the 8-minute video, you'd be fine. But the 35-minute video is her going through a bunch of examples. So you get lots of examples of of seeing her do what we're talking about. So even then, it's probably more helpful. It's one of those things that's time saving. You spend 30 minutes watching examples, you probably do the homework faster, which gets you out sooner. So do that, right? Come to class, watch the videos, read the books. You don't want anything to slip through that you then don't get to that you don't know. So hold on one second. I got to pause again. Okay, so make sure you're going through those the modules and everything, and then I think you should be good to go. I think you'll largely be picking up a lot of what you need to take care of stuff. Okay, so with that said, let me switch over to the book. Again, once you're in the homework, you have access to the ebook, and then you can look up whatever section you need to look up. So you can kind of see I have this where I have 2 different windows, one just for the book, and then one where like it has the other work I'm working on. So you could have one window with the homework in it, and then one window with the book, and just have them side by side on your screen, and then you can look in the book while you're looking at the stuff. Kind of makes sense to do it that way, right? Okay, so we're starting with chapter 4, which should be in section 2, which is an introduction to the metric system. So let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's make this bigger. Might make it too big. There we go. That's too big. Sorry, I made it too big. Let's bring that down to size. Okay, so the metric system. The metric system is important. You will absolutely 100% need to understand the metric system. You will be using it every day in the medical field. So what is the metric system? Well, we have different systems of measurement. So, sometimes you might measure something in feet or miles or yards or meters or inches or, millimeters, centimeters. There's all these different units that we can use to measure things. And we're generally going to be measuring what? Lengths, weights, and volumes. And weights and volumes are obviously a big one for dosages. But lengths will come up from time to time where you need to understand lengths as well. So the metric system is kind of a system that makes sense, whereas the imperial system that we're used to in the United States makes no sense at all. It's just sort of it was pieced together over centuries and centuries where they just kind of threw values in there. And most of the rest of the world uses the metric system because it's logical and reasonable and reduces errors, and it just makes a lot of sense. We in the United States do not, because when we tried in the 70s, there was a big push to move to the metric system, and Americans just kind of couldn't wrap their brains around the number 10, apparently. So we don't use the metric system in general. We still use like miles and stuff like that. But there's a big weakness in the system that we have, and that's that you have to remember all these numbers, right? I can tell you from past experience, if I polled the class, if we were in a room and I said, who can tell me the number of feet in a mile? It'd be between 5 and 10% of you could remember that there's 5,280 feet in a mile. Of course, we know the basic ones. There's 12 inches in a foot, and there's 3 feet in a yard. But it just gets kind of silly when you start trying to figure out, like, well, how many yards would there be in a mile? And you get to just all these weird numbers that you have to have memorized, and you're multiplying them together. And it creates a system which is, one, you have to remember all these values, but two, is more error prone. You're more likely to make mistakes with the imperial system than you are with the metric system, because while the metric system is a logical, reasonable system of measurement, our imperial system is not. So that's why when you study science, you're largely going to be talking about the metric system. Okay. Occasionally, physics uses this problem where they still talk about like feet and stuff, but by and large, physics even uses the metric system. If you're in a real, like if you're doing actual science somewhere, those people are going to be using the metric system. And by and large, nursing and the healthcare system is going to use the metric system because, a lot of that is science-based, but also you're less likely to make mistakes with the metric system because you're not trying to calculate all these weird numbers. You're not trying to remember weird numbers. You need to know one number for the metric system, and that's the number 10. And it makes sense because we use a base 10 number system, right? What does a base 10 number system mean? That means we have 10 symbols for our numbers. And when you run out of numbers, we just add another place, right? So 0 through 9, once you hit 10, you're using symbols you already used, 0 and 1, but you now have 2 of them, right? So a base 10 number system arises, largely it's believed, because we have 10 fingers that we use to count things. So then it makes sense we'd have a base 10 number system. There are other base number systems you can use. Base 12, base 2, base 16 get used for different computer type stuff. But by and large, the system that we seem to understand best is, like what they call round numbers. We're talking about tens, right? So the metric system just makes a lot of sense because you just have to remember the one number, that everything is divisions of one number. So in the metric system, you have a base unit for your volume, weight, and length, right? So your base unit for length is the meter, which is close to about a yard. It's approximately a yard, but not exactly. So that's our base unit for the meter. The gram is our base unit for weight. And what was the other one I said? We had... and the liter is our base unit for for volume, right? So if you're trying to remember those, like just think about like a 1 liter bottle of soda. You go, oh, that's a liter. Okay. Grams, we don't come across a whole lot in our system because we're used to using pounds and ounces. If you go to the store and you're buying something from the bulk bins, it's all in pounds and ounces and stuff like that. So we're not as familiar with with grams, but grams make a lot of sense in to use as the metric system, and then so those are the base systems, the base measurements, the base units, and then what we have from there is divisions, right? What if we want something smaller than a meter? Well, what happens is you break up your unit into divisions that make the most sense for what you're doing. So that's part of using any kind of measurement system, is deciding which of these measurements makes the most sense for what I'm trying to do, right? So if you're trying to measure, you know, the width of a proton, you're probably not going to use a meter, right? Because it would be, you know, 0.000000000009 meters or something like that, right? Well, that's kind of a silly way to do that. You would use a unit then that is already a fraction of a meter. So here's how we do this. Let me find the right page here. Is this the one I wanted? I think this is the one I wanted. So what happens in the metric system is you take your base unit. Let's just talk about the meter for now being the base unit. And then you can you can divide that down to get smaller units, or you can increase it to get bigger units. Okay, so we use Latin-based prefixes in order to tell us if, like, well, what version of that original unit are we using. So, for instance, deca, D-E-C, dec, in your Latin means 10, right? So deci means 1/10. Deca means 10. So in other words, a decameter is 10 meters. A decimeter is 1/10 of a meter. So you can see how it's the prefix is cluing you into what version of that original base unit you're using. Okay, so like centa, cent means 100, right? Again, from the Latin. So like a cent, a penny, is 100th of a dollar. A cent, $4.07 is 7/100ths of a dollar. So a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. Did I say that right? Centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. So if you take a meter, you break it up into 100 equal pieces. Those equal pieces are a centimeter. Milla means 1,000, 1,000th of a meter. So you take a meter, break it up into 1,000 equal pieces. Each one of those is a millimeter long. Okay, we can go the other way. Hecto means 100, right? So that would be 100 meters. A hectometer would be 100 meters. A kilometer, which most of us have heard, kilo is 1,000, and meter is our base unit. So a kilometer is 1,000 meters. So you can see how once you learn the basic, once you learn the, like, there's like 6 that'll come up a lot, and there's really like 3 that are gonna, or there's like 2 that are gonna come up all the time, right? Like really regularly. But once you learn those, it just kind of becomes second nature, right? And you're not having to memorize a bunch of different numbers. It's all just powers of 10, right? Because that's an important key. And that's why this works so well, is multiplication and division with these kinds of numbers is really easy. Because if we want to convert from a meter to decimeters, it's just a matter of moving the decimal place the right number of places and in the right direction. You don't have to worry about, like, well, if I have 5 miles and I'm going to multiply that by 5,280, what do I come up with? You don't have to worry about that with the metric system. You're just moving the decimal place, right? As far as conversions, obviously you might have to actually multiply some numbers at some point, but your conversion is just a matter of moving the decimal place. Makes it very, I mean, how hard is that, to just move the decimal place? And you just have to be informed about where you're putting it. So for the meter, you can see centimeters, 100th of a meter. Kilometers, 1,000 meters. Okay, what about weights? Well, your base unit is the gram. So a centigram is just 100th of a gram. See how it's like the same information. Oh, I already know what centa is because we talked about a centimeter. So a centigram should be 100th of a gram. Oh, okay. This is all very consistent and logical, right? So you see how once you learn this pretty basic system, you're going to make less mistakes because the math is so much easier, right? And obviously when you're dosing people, you don't want to make mistakes, right? So a kilogram would be 1,000 grams. A milligram would be 1,000th of a gram. So same prefixes. And then obviously you have that for the liter. So you'll see this a lot. A kiloliter is 1,000 liters. You're going to see in the healthcare system, milliliter is going to come up a lot. So that's 1,000th of a liter. You're going to see those on a regular basis, right? Especially the weights and the capacities, usually called volume. You're going to see those a lot. So milligrams, obviously a lot of medicines are prescribed based on milligrams, and a lot of times you're going to be doing stuff based on milliliters. So volumes and weights, pretty big, pretty important. So it's very important that when someone talks about a microgram or a milligram or something like that, you can identify quickly, I know what that is. Like you should get to a point pretty quickly where you just know that. Like, and not, I mean, I guess you could call it memorization, but it's almost more than that. You just need to know it and understand what it is, right? It's like the way you know your name. You don't necessarily like say, well, I have my name memorized. It's like, well, I just know my name. It's the same thing here. You just need to know these basic conversions. It's just going to come up constantly in your job. So you want to know it inside and out. Okay. Right, and you can find tons of videos. I posted one on Canvas that really kind of walks you through, and like we already walked through it, but putting the prefixes together with your basic units and understanding how to go between those. So, in other words, you might have to, like, a lot of times, and I don't even love the way the book does this, they kind of talk about moving the decimal left and right based on, I think they overcomplicate it. What you should be doing in your job, and they do mention this in the book, is you should be always using common sense. We see this in math classes so often, where whatever answer people get, or if they punch buttons on a calculator and it shows them a number, it's almost like a faith, where they just have faith that that number is right. Okay? But what you always want to do is stop and go, does that make sense? Right? And they talk about this in the book, the chapter, because I forget which chapter, but I read it yesterday, where they talk about, before you give someone a dosage, you want to stop and go, does this make sense? I just did a conversion. Does this conversion make sense, or did I make a mistake? And you want to have that common sense piece that catches you and go, wait a minute, if I give them this, that's way too much. That doesn't make sense. And then you look and realize, oh, I've missed a decimal, or I've made a mistake in some way, and then you can fix it, okay? So, yeah, be able to convert between, kilograms and micrograms and liters and milliliters and grams and, all that kind of stuff. So that's a very common thing that you're going to see, and it really just amounts to moving that decimal place. So think about it this way. If someone was to ask you, well, how many kilometers are there in a meter? How could I convert 1 meter to a kilometer? Well, let's see. That's 3 powers of 10, right? So I'm going to move the decimal 3 places. But do I move the decimal place to the left, or do I move the decimal place to the right? Well, this is one of those common sense things. If we want to know how many kilometers there is in a meter, well, a meter is small and a kilometer is very big, so there would be a very small number of kilometers in a meter, so we would move the decimal 3 places to make it 0.001, right? So you move it, basically ask yourself, should this number be getting bigger or smaller? And then that's going to tell you if you should be moving the decimal to the left or the right. I see people do it all the time where they try to memorize, and this is in my other classes too. People try to memorize when to move the decimal place left and when to move it right, but because they've memorized it, they're not actually thinking about it, and then they end up moving it the wrong direction. Where if you just think about it, you're less likely to move it in the wrong direction because you're like, well, there's clearly not 1,000 kilometers in a meter. That doesn't make sense. There must be 1,000th of a kilometer in a meter. Oh, that does make sense. And then you'll do it the right way. So I highly encourage you, take the time not just to blindly memorize these, but learn like what they mean so that when you make a conversion, you'll understand if you did it right or wrong, and you'll catch when you do it wrong, right? Because you're going to make mistakes. We all make doing mathematics is making mistakes. The key is, I tell this to my students all the time, because students kind of think that like people who are good at math are just perfect at math and never make mistakes, and people who are bad at math, that's all they do is make mistakes. And that's not the case, right? I'll tell you, I have a PhD in math. Every PhD in math that I've known, every person with a master's degree in math that I've known, we make mistakes all the time. Okay? The difference is when I make a mistake, it stands out and I go, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. Something's not right here. and then you figure out what's wrong and you fix it, right? So don't count on yourself to never mess up a calculation. Count on yourself to catch it when you do mess up a calculation, and that involves thinking. You have to be aware of what you're doing and recognizing, wait a minute, that seems like way too much medicine to be giving this person. Oh, I used the wrong prefix for my dosage. Oh, that's a good thing I didn't give them that much medicine, right? And then you can fix it. So always be thinking. Always be working on that. The book kind of mentions, again, I won't have time to cover every single aspect, but the book kind of mentions that frequently you're going to be moving things 3 decimal places. Not all the time, but you're going to be dealing with milliliters a lot. Well, milliliters is 1,000th of a liter. It means you're going to be moving the decimal 3 places to get to milliliters and stuff. So the book has some good examples about it, that you're moving a number of decimals to the left or to the right. But I think people will probably be okay with what I've said from chapter 4, and between the video that I posted and the book itself, I think you should be able to probably get through most of that material. So that's chapter 4, was just an introduction to the metric system in general, okay? Okay, let me close this metric system stuff. And lots of videos on actually. Oh, I was going to show you one more thing. Oh, here. So you can kind of see here too, they do a nice job of just showing as you go, they've got the prefixes here. And it's just telling you, like, if this is liters, then your 1/10 of a liter is deciliter. Your 100th of a liter is centiliter, and so on. And you just have these, they're all just powers of 10 going up and down. Okay, let's get back to, let's see, I can close that. Where am I? Oh, in the book. So let's go. Oh, and learn your basic abbreviations. M for meter, G for gram, and capital L for liter. And then you've got your prefix abbreviations, right? And you're basically going to go from there. Right. Let's see. Was there anything else I wanted to say? I don't think so. I think the conversions are, like I say, you're just going up and down, moving that decimal place. Oh, what I will say is the video that I posted in this section is actually a little advanced for the section we're doing, but it has to do with some conversions that are coming up in a few chapters that you're going to be doing later. So I put it in there just so you could start getting used to that way of converting anyways. It's basically how you convert things in chemistry. So it'll work for these simpler conversions, but it'll also work for the harder conversions that you're doing later. So just kind of recognize there's 2 types of conversions going on. There's the simple ones where you're just moving decimal places back and forth, but you're actually going to have to do, you might at some point have to convert feet to meters or something like that. And then it gets a little more complicated. The video I posted is going to show you how to do that. So it's getting you ready for that stuff that's coming up. Okay. All right, then where were we here? Oh, common errors and dosages. The book has really good stuff in here. Oh, the discussion forum that I posted for you to fill out when you're at the end of the week, when you're done with these chapters, is actually about stuff you read in the book that we didn't have time to cover in class. So there's a number of common errors. Like they'll point out things like common errors. When should you include zeros? When should you not? So that you're comfortable with writing this stuff out. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by a message in chat. Anyways, make sure you're reading those things because there's lots of important information that's in there that we won't always have time to cover in class. And then you can use that as the thing that you write about in the discussion forum at the end of the homework, right? But this is worth mentioning. As you know, a lot of things that are written on a prescription bottle or different places I mean, some of the medicines you buy, the writing is impossibly small, right? I mean, I have really good eyesight, and sometimes I can't read the things. They're so crazy small that they've gotten them written on there. You need like a magnifying glass or something. And it makes sense. The harder something is to read, the more likely you are to make mistakes writing it. So what we want to do is write things in a way that will lead to less mistakes, because mistakes have big consequences. So they talk about this in the book. They talk about failure to write a 0 in front of the decimal point. So that's the difference between writing 0.2 or just 0.2. And I will admit that when I'm in my algebra classes, a lot of times I write things as 0.2. I don't write the 0 in front. It's like, well, it's a little redundant, right? The problem being in healthcare, when you're talking about things that are regularly written really, really tiny, if you write it as 0.2 milligrams, maybe that little point is so small that a person can't see it, or you don't notice it because you weren't looking quite close enough, and you mistake 0.2 milliliters as 2 milliliters. Well, you've just greatly overdosed somebody, right? So we don't want to do that. If in healthcare, it's understood if you're going to write like 0.2, you'll write it as 0.2, because then when you're looking at it, you might not notice the decimal point, but you will notice that 0 and go, why is there a 0 in front? Oh, because it's 0.2, not 2. Okay? So that's what they're talking about in the book, about writing 0.2 milligrams rather than 0.2 milligrams, because it's a safety feature to catch you from reading it wrong. We don't want someone's eyesight to end up, with a bunch of injured patients, right? So also the other way around is, well, a lot of times if a number, like in science, if say you're taking a physics class, there's a whole lot of thought that goes into when do you write something as 2 miles and when do you write it as 2.0 miles. Well, in physics and chemistry, it usually has to do with the accuracy to which you are measuring something. In nursing and healthcare, it's more often about not making mistakes for the same reason. So if I write something as 2.0 versus writing it as 2, if I write it as 2, you're going to read it as 2. But if I write it as 2.0, you might not see the decimal because it's so tiny, and you think that it really says 20. And you now give a person 20 milligrams rather than 2 milligrams of something. Not good. So they do a pretty good job explaining, and I think they make it pretty clear here. In healthcare, they have specific ways that they want you writing things because it's going to lead to less mistakes when you're dosing somebody. Okay. Also, be aware, some of the times in the book they mention it as like what is it called? I forget what it's called, but like in the medical field, you have some people that just do like data entry, right? Where you're like entering data about certain stuff. Well, there's also conventions in that field where they want things entered a certain way, or else the software that you're entering it into isn't going to like it. So you need those conventions for a number of different reasons. Okay. Okay, right. That's where we're at. So I knew there was something else I wanted to mention. Okay, Chapter 5, Units, Percents, Milliequivalents, Ratios, and Household Measures. So this is just a really good, basically, if you read this, you should have about all you need to know. Sometimes things are going to be given in terms of ratios. So they talk about parts, 4 parts of this to 5 parts of that. So where's the definition? Oh, commas are not usually used unless it's in a quantity that has at least 5 numbers. So a lot of times we're used to writing like the number 4,000. You'd write 4, 000. They're saying that when it comes to healthcare stuff, we don't usually use commas until you get to the 5th digit. So like 20,000 would have a comma in it, whereas 2,000 would not. So you just want to like stick to that convention as well. Okay. You got percents. So we did percents earlier in the algebra section. It's kind of the same thing, right? And how these go together. So you'll have some percent measure problems. Yeah, ratio measures. So let's see, is this where the definition was? Yeah. So ratio strengths are used primarily in solutions. They represent parts of a drug per parts of solution. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about that. It's the drugs per solution, because the other way you could do it is like the parts of the drug per parts of, say, the water. But that's not what they're saying. They're saying it's the parts of the drug per solution. So make sure that you're thinking about the ratio in the right way. So example, a 1 to 100 strength solution has 1 part drug in 100 parts solution, right? So you have 100 parts of solution, 1 part of the drug. A 1 to 5 solution contains 1 part of drug in 5 parts solution. So this is kind of like when you go to the store and you buy some product like, say, bleach. When you go to the store and buy bleach, you're not really buying, like, you know, 1 gallon container of bleach. You're not really buying a gallon of that drug, but a gallon of the chemical solution of like pure bleach. What you're buying is a little bit of bleach, usually around 5%, in like a whole bunch of water, right? And that makes sense because like pure bleach is really hard to store. It sort of eats through things. It's really dangerous. You get a little bit on you. It actually can affect you and stuff. If you're using like cleaning bleach around the house, you know, don't get it in your eyes. But if you get a drop on you, not a big deal. If you're dealing with like pure acid, a little bit can do a lot of damage, can destroy things, stuff like that. So what you're really buying is a little bit of bleach and a bunch of water. And that's really what we're talking about here, is you're talking about a little bit of medicine in some water. Are we talking about 1 part medicine to 5 parts solution? Are we talking about 1 part medicine to 100 parts solution? That's what we're really talking about here, is just ratios. And, you know, you'll have some problems to go through and work on that. Let's see. There was a question a little while ago asking about how to access the online book on that platform. Yeah, so first you have to set up your account on the online homework. Once you've done that, on the left it'll say ebook, and once you click ebook it'll come up. But you have to go in there and set the homework up first. Okay, you have to get that started to do that. And then definitely anyone who's having problems with that over the next week, let me know, right? And there's the household measures. There's some discussion in here and apothecary measures. There's basically discussions about, there's lots of terms that have been used for the last few hundred years that are going out of style because basically they're not helpful, right? They're kind of like what I mentioned with the metric system. The metric system is very logical. You're going to make much less mistakes if you're using the metric system. Some of these other ones are not consistent. They're hard, you know, you don't see them used very much, so there's not a lot of standardization, and there's a big movement to try to move away from those types of units. So you might see where they talk about household measures, which is like tablespoon, teaspoons, drams, drops. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you know, different stuff that I do in the kitchen, and now I have to go figure out what 3 teaspoons is or something. It's like, it's ridiculous, right? Instead of just using the metric system. So those are kind of going out of style for nursing and healthcare, because it just use the milliliter equivalents, right? If that's what you want to use. And like a drop. You ever see something where they tell you to use 7 drops? Like, well, it depends what I'm dropping it from. If I have a little tiny dropper with a really small diameter end to it, tubing, then a drop is small. If I do it from a bigger one, a drop is much bigger. So those just don't make a lot of sense. So they're not getting used anymore. Apothecaries use a thing called grains, which, you know, you may run into these from time to time, hopefully not very much. But grains is another version where they're like, most people don't have any concept of what a grain is. So the apothecary measures are sort of on the outs as well. So it's just, that chapter is kind of just introducing you to some other measures that you may find on a regular basis, but a number of them, they tell you right in the chapter, like, these are going away, and hopefully you won't see these in the workplace, right? I don't think there's too many hospitals still using grains and teaspoons and stuff like that, right? Really, at this point, should be moved over to, the metric system. Okay. Then we get into oral medication labels and dosage calculation. So again, I've put videos in all these sections so that you can watch some videos. And it's a nurse who's doing the video. So she's, I'm really good with the math, but I'm not an expert in nursing. So it is kind of nice to see a video where the person knows the math. And oh, by the way, they also know all the nursing behind it. So they can give you a little bit better context than I can. I'm not an expert in the nursing itself, right? So you have a number of different type of tablets that a person can take, right? You've got, I think this is a typo. It says tablets, but I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be tablets. Then you have scored tablets. The tablets are scored so they can be broken. So what happens with a lot of medications is you can have them prescribed in different amounts. So that one pill is a certain amount, right? So you might have a doctor who says, oh, I want you taking 100 milligrams of this, but it comes in 50 milligram tablets, so take 2 of them. But at some point, it becomes not feasible. You don't want to tell somebody, like, take 8 of these tablets in the morning and take 8 of these tablets in the evening. That gets to be a little bit ridiculous, right? So what happens is they have basically different strengths of the pills, so that, if your doctor is trying to up your dosage, they'll just give you a new prescription where each tablet is twice as much as what you used to take. So you were taking 1 tablet before, you're taking 1 tablet now, but you're now taking a tablet which has twice the medicine in it, right? So the reason they score these tablets is also so you can cut them in half. That way, if your doctor wants you taking 50 milligrams, she can prescribe you the 100 milligram tablets and tell you just cut them in half. Sometimes people can save you some money that way. I don't have to tell any of you, but our healthcare system is completely screwed up when it comes to like how things are paid for and what things cost. It's nonsense. But so sometimes a doctor can help you out and go, well, it's going to save your insurance a little, or you'll save a little money if I give you the higher dose, but have you cut them in half or whatever, right? So then you've got coated tablets, capsules, gelatin capsules, and then controlled release capsules. These ones here, you can't cut in half in the same way. Like these are meant to be cut in half up here. These ones you can't do it because then all the little things inside, all the little beads or whatever, just kind of go everywhere. So it doesn't work that way. But there's a whole bunch of information, and you have homework problems on this where you want to get good at looking at the labels and identifying what information is on there, right? Now, when you first look at the homework, you might go, that's like a lot of problems. I think the first homework has like 40 problems on it. But honestly, if you already know the metric system, you probably could do those 40 problems in less than 10 minutes, right? So like many of those problems could be done in a few seconds if you know the metric system. And so as you're learning the metric system, you'll move through it pretty quick. It's not really that intimidating. Some of the problems here are really quick here. If you understand how to read a label, you're going to like find all the information really quick when it says like, how many tablets are on here? And you go, oh, this says 100 tablets. What is the name of the... Like when we do these homework assignments, when I'm picking homework assignments, it estimates how long it's going to take students to do it. And I was looking at one because it said it was going to take students 8 minutes to figure out the information from the label. And I looked, and it was, who's the manufacturer? And I'm like, why would it take them 8 minutes to figure out that Pfizer's the manufacturer? That doesn't make sense to me. But it's going to take you all a various amount of time. Some of you are already, pretty deep into the healthcare field. You probably already know how to do this. You're going to look at it and go, yeah, I know where to find all this information. Some of you, it's going to be a learning exercise to go through and figure out, oh, there's the manufacturer, there's the name of the drug, there's the generic term of the drug, there's the dosage strength, and all that information. You're going to figure it out, and then you'll be able to read it, right? Because you have those homework problems on how to read that. So, there's numerous examples in the book. So you want to look in the book, look at the examples where they break it down for you, like this one right here. The small unit dosage label given here bears only the name phenobarbital, right? So it says it's phenobarbital, which is actually the generic name for the drug. So in this case, they're giving the generic name, so you'll be able to go through and find the generic. Notice that in this case, they're breaking down the component pieces, what is in here. They're telling you there's 100 tablets in here. They're telling you, who the manufacturer is, endo laboratories. All that information is up here. So you just have to, a little bit of a practice to go through and figure out where that stuff is located. Different labels will have information in different places. But, once you've read some of these, it's going to become second nature to you to know where to look and where to pull out the different information that you're looking for. So that's what we're looking for there. Right. Yeah, okay. Right, here is another example of one. And then they give you, a bunch of information, and they're like, can you find this information that's on here? And like I say, different drugs are going to give you different information on the label, but you want to be able to pick it out. Oh, it was like this one. It was a label like this one on the homework where it was like saying it was going to take 8 minutes for students to figure out the manufacturer was Pfizer, which is weird because it says Pfizer right on there. But, you just kind of play around with and figure out where those are. Where are we? Right. So chapter 6. So see how these are really short, these chapters? They call them chapters, but it's like you can kind of read the chapter in 10 minutes and then pick up all the information and then go back and look at the examples and stuff. Let's see. Did I skip some? I might have skipped some. Let me double check here. And you'll also get used to the fact that depending on the type of medication you're looking at, the labels are going to have different stuff. So if something has, tablets in it, the information that you need to read on the cover is going to be a little bit different than if you're looking at something that is a liquid and you're supposed to administer a liquid to a patient rather than giving them a tablet. They mentioned in the book, one of the examples they give is for kids. Right? It's kind of hard to get kids to swallow sometimes, especially if they're little. You tell them to swallow, they're not going to do it. Could be hard on their stomach, whatever. So a lot of times with kids, you give them liquid. That way, you kind of use it's not a syringe, but I forget the name of it, but the non-sharp syringe, right? So you just kind of shoot the stuff into their mouth, and then they end up swallowing it, and then they've got the medicine. So you have to keep in mind the labels are different based on the type of medicine that you're dealing with. And so oral solution labels are going to be a little bit different as well. So like here, Lomatil liquid. So they're basically telling you how to administer the liquid versus telling you like about each tablet that's in there. So it's a different context for the different labels, and you want to make sure that you're comfortable being able to read any of those, because obviously you're going to have to be able to read any of those types of labels when they come up later, right? You're going to have to be able to deal with that. Yeah, lots of different labels here. Always read calibrations. Oh, right. And they have this is really important. One thing that we see on a regular basis, and the science department gets grumpy at us about this, even though we fight it probably just as hard as they do, is using units. Okay, when you're doing real science, when you're doing medicine, when you're doing stuff that's really important, like science and medicine, really important, right? You can make really good cases that those things are really, really important because they, medicine, you're literally taking care of someone's health. You should always be using units. So a lot of times people, when it's a silly problem in an algebra class and someone leaves off the units, it's no big deal. In a medical situation, when someone leaves off the units, it's going to lead to confusion and possibly harm to someone who is either, not going to get enough dose to get any help or going to get too much of a dose and then sort of pay a price. So you can kind of see on these little cups here, there's like units on here, right? And it's really important because you don't want to make assumptions about what these units are. That's going to lead to mistakes. So just like we would expect on this cup, if it was just numbers, like imagine the dram part wasn't there. It was just 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. You'd be like scratching your head and going, what unit is that? Is that drams or are those ounces? Like what is it that I'm looking at? Well, that's why it's really important that it says dram, because then you know, oh, that's drams. I don't even want to deal with that. That's like a, that's the home, what do they call it? The home system measurement or whatever, right? Versus over here, we've got ounces, tablespoons and teaspoons, and then the reasonable one, milliliters, right? Which we should be, probably trying to use the most of, but sometimes you got to use what they give you on the label. So just like these cups would always have the units printed on it, you're never going to see one of these cups with like no units, or you shouldn't see anything like that. You don't want to do that either. You should always use units, right? We try to get students to use units. This is a case where it's really important. Just like when you hear scientists talking about stuff, they always use units, right? They never say, oh yeah, we clocked the bird going 25. What does that mean? Oh, we clocked the bird going 25 miles per hour. Okay, now I know what unit you're talking about, right? It's the same thing, obviously, with medicines. You have to be including that unit in order to put otherwise you're only telling half the story, right? And with limited information, you end up making mistakes. They talk about here versus the, and I'm sure you all know this more than me, but you don't want to mix up a real syringe where you're using an actual needle with these food ones where it's just kind of to like shoot the liquid in your mouth or whatever. They're not designed to be interchangeable, so don't try to put a needle on one of these. They specifically talk about that in the text here. They're not made to go together, so it doesn't work right anyways, but there are times where they mention that sometimes people force the issue and then bad things happen. So just recognize the difference. These colored ones are meant for injecting fluid, like not with a needle. Like you just sort of like, you do this with your kids. When you have kids, you've got their medicine. You just kind of shoot it in their mouth and then hopefully they swallow most of it. So usually these are colored. It's like this one's orange, right, is what they mention. And they kind of have a different size and shape so you don't mix them up accidentally, but make sure you're doing that. Right, oral syringe, I guess is what it's called. Right, so don't make that mistake. There was something else I want to say about these. Where was that? Oh, the main concern with the correct syringe identification is that oral syringes, which are not sterile, should not be confused with hypodermic medications, which are sterile. So obviously, using something that is not sterile in a situation where it is supposed to be sterile can lead to infections and all sorts of problems, right? So we don't want to do that. And you can see on here, right, they've got the numbers, but then notice they've got the unit at the bottom. It says ml, so we can see, they didn't write the unit every single time, but you can see that the unit is milliliters, and you can kind of see that on this picture as well. Sometimes they just have the number, but then they do include the unit on there so that oh, this row right here, this column right here, that's milliliters, and this one over here is teaspoons, so that you still know what unit you're talking about, right? Units are super important. Always be including units. Uh-oh, what did it do? It kicked me out of my book. Let's see. I probably had it open for too long. Let's see. Accept. You gonna let me back in? No. Okay. So someone asked before. So once you have the homework set up, you'll go into the homework. It makes you load it in a different tab. And then once you do over on the left, it's going to say ebook. Ebook. My head's in the way. See where it says ebook? So you click that, and then it's going to open. It's doing for me on a different monitor, but bring over here. It's opening up the book for me, and it's making, they want you to do all this different stuff. Oh, it's even got my page saved. That was weird. Let's get to that last chapter. Okay, chapter 7, safe medication administration. So I'm sure many of you already have probably experience with a bunch of this. Hold on, how did I get rid of this before? There we go. Made it a little bigger. So safe medication administration, again, all of this super important reading you should do, because I don't have time to cover all of it. But so the forms that you're going to be using are going to vary from hospital to hospital, but there are quite a few commonalities that you're going to see. So one of the things they go over in this section is how to read the stuff that you the forms that you're going to run across in a hospital or something. Yeah, so if your screen looks different from the student perspective, feel free to let me know. But once you sign up for the account, it should, like, you have to go through and set up your account, and you have to pay and everything. Once you do that, it should give you access to the ebook. It should be over on the left. There should be a link that says ebook. Someone was asking about it in chat there. Okay, so one of the things you're going to let's see, we get to the example of it. Where is it? Here we go. So here's an example of what you're going to be doing when you give a dosage. You generally want to record that dosage, right? If you give someone a dosage of a medicine and then you just know that you gave it to them, then how do you know 5 minutes later another nurse or whoever isn't going to come in and give the same dosage because they're like, oh, I think it's time for this person to get their dosage, and then they give it to them. So generally what you want is you want a record that shows when someone had medication. That way when you give someone a medication, you can make sure that someone else didn't give them that same medication 5 minutes ago. Okay, so this is an example of how the form may look. Now, you're going to want to go through and look at, they give a breakdown for exactly what everything means in here. But you've got some columns that make sense. Start and stop. When did this, basically the date, when did this person start getting this medication? When's it going to stop? What's the medication and the dose? So here they've got what? Lanoxin, 0.25 milligrams. They put here the, is it dioxin or digoxin? I can't tell from the writing if that's a G. But they give the generic, and then they tell you how often. Or they're telling you also daily check pulse. So check the pulse when you're giving this, right? So you can see it's the medication, the dosage, and then also if there's any important information that needs to go with that, okay? The schedule is telling you when that person should get it. So this is saying we give it to them at 8 a.m., right? It wouldn't make sense to give somebody their dose at 11:59 p.m. and then someone comes in at 12:01 and gives them the next dose and say, hey, it was different days. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If you're supposed to get one dose a day, you probably want it at the same time each day. So this is indicating 8 a.m. That's when you're supposed to give it to them. The route is giving you, that's the way in which it's being administered, right? Let me double check here. Yeah. So route, PO is oral, so they're taking a pill or whatever. They're taking it orally. GJ is the initials of the nurse who did it. So in other words, you can, you'll look at this and know, oh, Sally already gave him this dose 30 minutes ago. Okay. Or whoever you work with at the time. So you can keep track of that. Let's see. And then there's like little details here. And then at the bottom, there's actually a code. You would know this probably from working with people over time, but if you were new or someone else was new or you weren't familiar, you can look down here and it'll show you the initials with the person's full name. Oh, JG, that's G Jennings. Okay, let's go talk to G Jennings, whatever it is that you need to get a hold of her, okay? So you've got your medication administration record. This is going to help reduce mistakes, right? Oh, and it's MAR for short, right? What is it? Medication administration record, MAR. I don't know. Do you call it a MAR? I'm guessing. You some of you would know more than me, but that's the form that you want to be able to fill out and read. Okay. Then you have the 6 rights of medication administration. So the 6 rights of medication administration consist of the right drug, the right dosage, the right route, the right time, the right person, and the right recording of a dosage when it is administered. It doesn't, I think it doesn't take very much imagination to recognize that if you mess up any of these 6 things, things could go poorly. Right? If you mess up the person that you gave the dose to, that could be bad. If you mess up the drug, if you mess up the dosage, if you mess up the way in which you gave it to them, or you mess up recording it, all of those can lead to problems. So those are called the 6 rights of medication administration. Okay, and then they go into detail on each one of these. I'm not going to have time with the 9 minutes left to go into the details, but again, very important. I highly recommend you read those. It's pretty clear. You want to give people the right drug at the right dose in the right method, right? Any of those clearly could go wrong. You want to do it at the right time, like I just mentioned. If we give a person a dose once a day, we don't want to give it to them at 11:59 and then 2 minutes later at 12:01 and go, what? I gave it to them once a day. What do you want? What's the problem? Well, the problem is you basically just gave a double dosage, and then they're going to have to wait a long time to get that next dosage again. So they're going to have one time where they have too much medicine, and then an extended period where they don't have enough medicine in their body. And if that's something like a painkiller, that could be really unpleasant or dangerous, and it just won't be as effective. So you want to make sure you're giving it at the right time. Obviously, the right person, that sounds like it sounds obvious, but again, I would read through here. You're going to run into this more often than not. As a teacher who has to read roll calls, I can tell you there are people with very similar names in classes. I've had a class before where I had 2 people unrelated, didn't know anything about each other. They literally had the same name. Same first name, first last name. It was something Thompson or Thomas or something like that. I don't remember the first names. But like literally on my roll and all my stuff I did for the class, there was no way to tell these 2 individuals apart. It was really challenging to make sure that I was giving the right grade to the right person because they weren't really getting the same grades. They got very different grades from each other. So I always had to be aware that I was giving the right grade to the right person. Now, in my case, when I give the wrong grade to the wrong person, they just say, oh, I think you made a mistake. Can you fix it? And it's not a big deal. We could see how giving, with dosages, obviously that's very important that you don't make that mistake in the first place. So the right person, very important. Duplicate names. It was a headache when I had those 2 students with the same exact name. I can sympathize with how that would be difficult when you're giving someone a drug that they're going to be taking. And then the right recording. We already talked about that. The nurse comes in 5 minutes later, doesn't realize you gave someone. They check the board and go, oh, it's recorded. This person got their dosage 5 minutes ago. Great. Let's not give it to them again. Right? So you can, obviously that's really important that you be able to fill those out and read them in a way that you can, be helpful to that system. And then they have the 7th right, partnering with the patient. And this is sort of a common sense way of really making sure that you're using that patient as a way to also eliminate chances for mistakes, right? If you come in and you see on the record, the MAR, the MAR, it says that they haven't had their dose, and you go, okay, it looks like you haven't had your dose. Let me give you this shot. And the patient is insisting that someone just gave them a shot 5 minutes ago. Then what should you do about it? Should you just insist, sorry, it's not on the paper, I'm giving you a shot? Or should you, this is the partnering with the patient. You believe the patient who's saying, no, someone just gave me a shot 5 minutes ago. Please double check before you give it to me. And then you can go investigate and find out what's going on. And then, maybe that other nurse goes, oh my gosh, you're right. When I was administering the drug, there was a big emergency and I forgot to record it. And then you haven't accidentally given that person a second dose, right? So this makes a lot of sense. Partnering with the patient recipient is so important a concern that it should be a seventh right. So it's not officially considered one of the six rights, but they're saying in this book it really should be. Okay, you are only half of a medication administration twosome. The medication recipient is one of your best assets in preventing errors. Consider the following not uncommon verbal reports. I just had my medication, or my doctor told me he was stopping this drug, or the doctor said I need a bigger dose, or the pill doesn't look the same as the one I had before, or where is my pill, or the pill made me sick the last time I took it. I mean, it's pretty reasonable to think any of those things a patient would say should cause you to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. Did the order change? Did the doctor change the order? Is it supposed to be another medication? Maybe the doctor wants to change the medication, but it didn't make it onto the record sheet, right? So then you check into it. You find out about it before you end up, doing something that then is irreversible, right? Once you inject somebody with something, it's in them, right? You will also be responsible for helping the patient learn what drugs and dosages he or she is taking, what they are for, what time they must be taken, and how they must be taken, right? So this is true for actual patients themselves, but then also for people who are helping those patients, right? If a woman is going to be kind of having to manage her mom's medications, well, then that woman needs to understand the medications so that she can make sure, if her mom is elderly and maybe not 100% there on a cognitive level, then that daughter really needs to understand the medication so that when she's at home and you're not there administering the medication anymore, the daughter can do it properly for her mother, who's probably going to get confused from time to time about what she's going to be taking. But the daughter knows and can say, nope, the nurse showed me exactly what's supposed to happen. This is the pill or the shot or whatever that you're supposed to get. So that care can be given properly to the mom when she's not in the hospital anymore. Okay, so that's a big one, is use that patient. And we've all had this where I've had this before. I'm in the hospital. You have a nurse that comes in, says almost nothing, does some stuff, and then leaves. But more often, they're talking to you a little bit, and you can kind of tell. They're learning when they're talking to you. They're like addressing. They're evaluating what you're saying. They're deciding, like, are you coherent? Or do you know what's going on? And they're making sure that you didn't just take a medicine, or the kind of things that we talked about right here. So, kind of all seen that in action when that's being done. So. Let's see, we're kind of running out of time here. So a couple of things as we wrap up. Make sure that you're getting the homework set up. For those of you who get in there and get it set up, you'll be able to go right into the homework, right? You'll go right into it. And like I said, some of these, especially the first assignment, looks like a lot of problems. You'll probably move through those problems very quickly. So make sure you do that. Once you get it set up, you should have a link for the ebook on the left side of the screen, and it'll let you open an electronic copy of the book, just like I have here. And then you want to make sure you're reading this. It's literally like 8 to 10 pages per chapter, but it's information that it really will help you become better at your profession, at your career, right? What you're trying to do, and be able to administer healthcare to people in a better manner, because you'll have a better understanding of these things. So please, I highly encourage you to read through each section. And then also there's the videos for you to watch and get that nurse, someone in the actual profession, their perspective on the metric system and converting from one thing to another and going through and doing those. Okay, so I will leave the Zoom meeting open, so for anybody who wants to hop in there and or if you're already in there and ask me questions, I am happy to answer those questions for you. What I would recommend is please try to get that homework set up as soon as you can, because if you are having trouble getting the homework set up, come to my office hours tomorrow and I'll help you with it. Come to my office hours on Wednesday and I'll help you with it. Rather than waiting till next week. Like if you wait till Thursday or Friday and go, I'm going to do the homework over the weekend, and then you wait till Friday to set it up and then it doesn't work, Now what? Now you have to wait till Monday and you're a week behind. So I would encourage you, try to get that, at least go in and get the homework set up. And then once it's set up and you go, okay, now I'm going to wait till Thursday, that's your business, right? That's kind of a decision. I mean, I guess it's all your business, but like, just get it set up so that you know it's going to work for the weekend. And then if you go, okay, I'm going to wait a couple more days to do the homework, that's up to you, right? So that's what I definitely recommend. And then those of you who need to do a retake on the exam, I'll study in the meantime for the next few days, study those problems, go to the tutoring center, come to my office hours, get the help that you need to get those problems done right. And then that retake will be up later this week. Okay? So good work, everybody. And anyone who wants to ask me questions, please stick around in Zoom. I'll answer those questions for you. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.